Okay, so again, I'm going to start with a quick introduction to my co-hosts for those of you who are new to my channel. So on the far left, you have Taka. She's a Kelpie Lab cross. You will hear her in the background quite often, either munching on biscuits because she loves her biscuits, or you might hear this kind of scratchy, scrabbly noise in the background. That's her walking across my wooden floors because she doesn't know how to walk quietly, apparently. Next to her is Amira. You will quite often hear her snoring. You may occasionally hear Taka snoring, but her snoring is a far more mellow kind of snoring. Much quieter, nothing like Amira's. Amira's snoring, you're definitely going to hear it because it is super loud. Then, of course, on the far right there is Mouse, the pup. He is currently 4 months old and he has some very noisy toys. So you may well hear him playing with his toys in the background, or if I'm babysitting my sister's pup who is a week older than Mouse, you may hear them playing like crazy in the background. I'm not going to put an image of him up because obviously he's not my dog, so I don't feel comfortable putting that image up. You may also hear Mouse occasionally just going cranky with my dogs because he really wants to play and they're just not interested. And of course, for bonus points, you may actually hear a bird in the background, a myna, who thinks he's an alarm clock. So if you hear alarm clock noises in the background, it's not me with an alarm clock that I forgot to turn off. It's a bird outside my window. Now, if you're new to my channel, the best way you can support my channel is by clicking that subscribe button and, of course, clicking like on my videos. And, of course, in terms of comments, leaving as many comments as you wish. I do my best to respond to everyone's comments, but there's so many comments these days, which is fantastic. So my goal is to try and catch up with that. At the moment, I'm a little bit behind. I also really need to thank everyone for their support over all this ongoing demonetization with my videos. It certainly does knock the wind out of you. It is really discouraging, but I'm determined to keep this channel going, and it just really helps when I have people telling me that they appreciate my work, encouraging me to keep going, and also when people offer super thanks, buy me a coffee, that sort of thing. I certainly don't ask for people to do those things, and you know, right now I'm more than happy to just wear the loss, and I hope people aren't feeling that they have to do that just to try and stop my channel from vanishing, because right now I am determined, for the sake of Maddie, for the sake of future victims, to keep my channel going, even if it is costing me money. Hopefully all this demonetization stuff is just a short-term glitch like it has been in the past, and we can just move on. So just a big thank you for all the support. It is truly greatly appreciated. Okay, so let's move on to today's video. So where we left off yesterday was basically after Detective Kevin O'Malley pretty much gave Jen a major dressing down. He told it to her how it was, made it pretty clear that he wasn't buying her stories, and that the goal was to find Maddie, and he wasn't going to play her games. He wanted her to cooperate. Jen, of course, pulled out all the stops with her usual silly, affected language, like a childish, whiny voice. Pulled out all these explanations that just didn't ring true, and it got her nowhere. So, on that note, let's jump in and continue with this interview.
You know more about where he goes, what he's doing, or what he would do than you want to realize. That's natural, not because I'm telling you, but because that's natural. I have best friends. I know more about them than I think I know about them. I just need to sit down and think about it. So I need you to sit down and think about it. Whether you need a minute when we're not in this room, whether you want to do it with us in this room, we need to leave here with an idea of where we can go look for. That is one thing we can agree on.
I've sent you the list of the stores that he may have stopped at and didn't stop at. The only outdoorsy places I can think of that we've ever gone to that he would know about would be Shingle Creek or Kissimmee Trail. I don't know if he knows where Lake Toho is, but that could be another option.
Because you think it's a wooded area? Because it's a place you guys have talked about together?
Because it's a wooded area with a lake, with gators.
So we are now getting into what I refer to as Jen's psychic phase. He's basically said to her, he's given her an ultimatum. You know, you have to do this. There's no choice. I think she believes she's not getting out of there until she actually starts to give some answers because of the things he's said before, and we heard that yesterday. She starts by trying to say, I gave you a list of the stores, which makes no sense. I've said this a million times. Why would he want to just take Maddie to a store? That's hardly the place you're going to be looking for a deceased child. She realises that, and she starts thinking about it, gets around to talking about Lake Toho. Now, I've actually shown this on a map. You have to go past Lake Toho to get to the location where Maddie actually was. It's a really, really long name. I can't remember the full name of the lake. That's the shortened version, which obviously locals call it. But when he asked her about that, is that because you guys have been there? Or is because it's a wooded area? And she's like, no, it's a lake with a wooded area with gators. So calmly, this is her own child she's talking about. And she seems quite calm and accepting of the idea of Stefan taking her daughter somewhere where there's gators. I really just can't with this woman. And the reason I call this the psychic phase is, and I've shown this on a map as well, basically the location where Maddie was, if you continue to follow that road around, you end up at Lake Lizzie. This is the lake that Jen is oh so very familiar with. And of course, all the lakes in that area have wooded areas and gators. Makes me think that's what the original plan, because to me it was divine intervention, and Stefan was certainly, in my opinion, headed for one of those lakes. And it seems like a heck of a coincidence that he's headed for the lake that Jen is so familiar with, and that Maddie was less than a mile from Jen's friend's house.
Like, we haven't discussed anything. This topic, I never asked him if he directly. I never thought he could have. I always assumed the best in him.
Wow, Jen, just spit it out, would you? So, she's really, really struggling to form a sentence here. And it's not out of that she's so upset she's having trouble to get air. It's because, in my opinion, her brain is rebelling, doesn't want her to actually say a lie. I mentioned this in the last couple of videos because we're seeing this so often throughout this interview, where basically she starts saying something that is blatantly lying, but she can't get it out because it's like her brain just goes, yeah, I can't say that because that's not the truth. So she starts trying to say that she hasn't discussed something. Pauses, has to repeat herself because she can't finish the sentence. Gets as far as, we haven't discussed anything. And then it's the this topic I never asked him. Still not a full sentence. If you just heard that completely out of context, you would be like, what the heck is this woman trying to say? Of course, the topic at the moment that's meant to be up for discussion is where he could have taken Maddie. Well, if you know nothing, then why would you even need to say we haven't discussed this? Because of course you haven't discussed it if you know nothing about what he did to Maddie. She's objecting to something that logically she shouldn't even have in her head. This topic, I never asked him. So are you saying you never asked him where he took Maddie? Because right now, you seem to have a fair idea of at least the intended location. And then she reverts back to her classic default excuse. I never thought he could have. She can't even get the full sentence out there because she knows that's a lie. And then she finally gets out with, I always assumed the best in him. Well, we know that's an outright lie because we've heard so many things from her where she pretty much conveys the fact that the guy is a complete and utter loser. What happened to the Woody Allen stuff, Jen? What happened to never trusting the man? What happened to, he lies to his parents all the time? What happened to him basically being a waste of space? Which is pretty much what you've told detectives. It seems that every time she comes close to giving away the fact that she knew what was going on, she reverts back to, I never thought he could have done this. I always assumed the best in him. I never saw anything wrong.
But I didn't ask him directly. I didn't even suspect. Not until you guys showed me that picture upstairs. We're here. I don't know.
It really is just more of the same here with Jen. You can see there's definitely no tears or anything. She's just putting on that silly, affected voice, the childish voice. She's started to give that little bit of information talking about lakes and wooded areas and gators. And now she's like, in her brain, she's just gone, oh crap, no, I can't, She doesn't want to make herself look guilty in any way. So coughing up any sort of information to her is an admission of guilt, I suspect. So she's doubled back and she's still going back to, ask him directly. I didn't even suspect. So she's trying to plead innocence here, but the things she says, like, I didn't ask him directly. Well, if you supposedly didn't suspect that he was responsible for Maddie going missing, of course you wouldn't have asked him directly. What she's saying really doesn't quite add up, does it? But she's basically just got herself so flustered and she doesn't know how to deal with it. So she's just spitting these things out, these half sentences, and getting nowhere fast.
I'm just thinking of, if I name places, it's going to be wooded areas that I can think of, but he hasn't told me anything. Like, he has not told me, or we haven't discussed.
So she is still trying to sell the same story. But he hasn't told me anything. Like, he's not told me, and then she pauses again. Or we haven't discussed. She cannot finish the sentence. Each time she keeps trying to say that he hasn't told her anything. And it sounds to me like, well, she's obviously referring to Maddie's location because that's what this whole discussion is about. But she's doing her best to say over and over again that they've never discussed where Maddie could be, where he took Maddie. She never asked him. Well, okay, if you hadn't suspected him, of course, you've never discussed it and you've never asked him. So why is it so important to say it over and over again, Jen? She is definitely overdoing the pleading innocence right now.
So him going to 192 that day, all you know is that he went to 192.
He said he wanted to visit House Card Rules. That was one of he named 3 stores, and that's one store I can remember him listing on that list.
House Card Rules?
Yeah, I don't have my phone.
We'll get your phone a little bit. House Card Rules. What kind of store is that?
I don't know if that's like a video game or card game or board top game store.
But that's on 192.
Close to one.
Okay.
I think close to 182 somewhere.
And he said he wanted to go to 3 stores.
Yeah. But he did tell me that I just don't remember which one.
Are there woods in that area? Are you familiar with 192?
No, not where these stores are. I have no idea.
Other than you came up with wooded areas that you know of.
Yeah.
You came up with wooded areas that you think he could double body in.
Because I've been there with him, yeah.
I need to know wooded areas where he travels. Right? You're saying we've been there so she could be there. So that tells me she's not there. It tells me it's a waste of a search.
Okay.
Because when I put 90 plus people there, that's all day. Right? We gotta coordinate that, we gotta put them there, so we need fruitful searches.
Yeah.
So I need likely places that you think, and I need places you think based off of conversations with him, not because you can picture in your mind that there's trees there.
Okay. There's no conversation I can think of.
So he's called her out over this whole constantly talking about the different stores, pointing out, well, are there wooded areas there? And she's like, no. And then he basically lays it all out for her. He wants her to actually talk about likely areas, not just random areas that have wooded areas or lakes. He's signalling her that he doesn't want her to keep messing him around. He doesn't want to hear all this BS that she's spouting. I didn't ask him, I don't know, yada yada. And what do you get? Once again, you get this really long pause from Jen. which usually signifies, well, always signifies with her, either a lie or something that she doesn't want to answer but she has to. And of course we get the really, really quiet answer, there's no conversation that I can think of. And of course the fact that it is barely inaudible, and it is after a long pause, makes me think that, yeah, probably she's not being entirely truthful here.
Where he's named interest in being anywhere near woods or it being along his way.
Said he got a flat tire. Tell me about the flat tire you got.
So he said he got a flat tire. I'm not sure when he got a flat tire, but he said he got a flat tire and then came directly home, and he got home around 2:40. So flat tire, he said he was driving down 192 and it just popped and shredded and fell apart. And he pulled over into a plaza and changed a tire for the first time in a very long time, and said he hurt himself doing it. The frame of the car, something came down on his finger.
All his lies, I don't care, but I want to know what you question him about.
So he's asked her about the flat tire, with, of course, the purpose being to try and figure out where Stefan took Maddie. So what does she do? Well, she faffs around again for a bit. She stalls, she pauses, and then instead of talking about possible locations, she just launches straight back into Stefan's story, his version of his story. She really doesn't want to discuss with the detectives possible locations for where Maddie might be. So she's just going to stall. And this time round, because it involves the tyre, she's got the perfect story that she can use to stall with. And he's not having a bar of it. He's cut her off and he's about to basically make her understand that actually she can't play these games anymore.
Why was he there? What was he doing? There's no way you're the most trusting woman in the world if you just don't ask clarifying questions. I know no relationship I've ever been in is that trusting. He just tells you he's gone at 3 in the morning getting a fucking Wawa, and you're like, ah, whatever, bet. Same thing with this. It's like, oh, yeah, I got a flat tire, was here. Why is he at these places? Do you not question him? Why were you on 192? Why did you dip out at 3 in the morning with my car?
I didn't know
Like
you
this,
did that.
because this is 2 times he went to 192. He went to 192 the day she disappeared, right? He's roaming, looking for her, south of where she went missing, because supposedly she went missing. And 192 is south of where that is.
And I
not very likely that that's the route she went on foot or abducted, and that him driving around is somehow going to locate her.
So he's trying to get her to explain why she hasn't asked Stefan any questions during this entire time that Maddie's been missing. And you can tell he's not fooling around anymore. He's expecting her to actually start to give some answers, some real answers. And he's giving her examples. And she waits until she finds one that she can actually latch onto. And she starts trying to say, I think, she says, I didn't know he, and I think she was going to say, I didn't know he went out on the 3 a.m. like the night after Maddie went missing. So instead of actually admitting that, yeah, no, she never asked him about anything, she's latching onto the one thing that she can deny. I didn't ask him about this one because I didn't know he did it. Meaning, don't look at the other ones, forget that question. Let's just focus on this one because I can say that I knew nothing about it. And of course, he's not buying into it. So he comes straight back at her, basically making it clear that he actually wants some straight answers from her. He's like, where he says he went, it doesn't seem logical. It shouldn't have seemed logical to you based on where he claimed to have dropped her off. It's actually in a different area from where he dropped her off. Why did you not ask him, essentially?
He did tell. I did question that. I was like, when I asked him where he's searching, he said 182. I said, why? That's nowhere where she would be. And he didn't give me a clear answer, and I don't know why I didn't push it. I just thought he was being stupid and oblivious because I don't see him as the smartest man.
So her adaptation to the detectives basically pointing out how very illogical it was, the claims of where he had gone searching, she latches onto that and makes it sound like she actually did question him over that. But see, the issue I have with that is that, to me, a parent who was genuinely concerned about their child being missing, they wouldn't care what this detective was saying in terms of, did you ask him about this area because it's a different area from where she went missing? You would expect the response to be, I was just grateful that he went out searching. That area, the area where Maddie supposedly had gone missing had been searched, according to Jen. Well, she knew that it had been searched. So, if you were genuinely concerned about your child being missing, you knew that the area where they had last been seen had been thoroughly searched, and someone says, well, I went and searched this area, you would be grateful for it. You wouldn't be so negative about it, not like she's going on here. So I think she's misread the detective. She hasn't listened to basically the overall thing of what he's saying. Basically, you've not questioned him about anything. And what does she do? She latches on to the example that he gives. Well, clearly it's a lie, because if she's latching onto the example, it's because she can't think of her own thing that she could say, yeah, I questioned him about this. And then she falls back on, I just thought he was being stupid and oblivious because I don't see him as the smartest man. Well, that doesn't exactly agree with her previous comment of, I always assumed the best in him. Which is it, Jen?
Like, I don't. I let him do what he does, but I don't trust a lot of his. Is the word judgment? I'm not sure, but I just don't trust that he makes the smartest decisions sometimes. Like, he likes to act like the smartest man in the room, but I don't think he is.
I think she realised that she said the wrong thing there when she said, I let him do what he does. Because you get that long pause after it, and then she's scrabbling to try and qualify what she says. But I don't trust all of his judgment. I don't trust that he makes the smartest decisions sometimes. And then she has to go in further with, he thinks he's the smartest person in the room, but he's not. In other words, she's saying here, I know I'm smarter than him. This is not the words of a victim. This is the words of someone who feels superior. She sees him as not the smartest cookie. She thinks she is smarter than him. She thinks clearly that her decision-making skills are better than his. That's what she is conveying here. Of course, meanwhile, we know that what she's currently doing here is still trying to stall. Because the detectives are still trying to, or at least Detective O'Malley, is trying to get some thoughts from her in terms of where Stefan could have taken Maddie. So she's dancing all around it. And how does she dance all around it? Well, the only way she can think of it is to start to criticise Stefan. Because she realises at this point in time that any information she gives them could make her look like she's involved, like she knows what's going on. So by basically suddenly putting this attack on Stefan, saying he's not the smartest person in the room, he doesn't make the best decisions, you know, he's no longer this person that she was praising 5 minutes earlier. Now he's just this pathetic loser. Because by saying that, she's separating herself from him and his actions. I'm better than that. I don't condone his actions. I don't even know why he does the things he does sometimes. I've got no idea why he would have done this or what he would have done, or, you know. It's all geared to avoid making her look guilty. Essentially, just let me remind you that Stefan's a lowlife. So because he's a lowlife, please don't look at me.
Do what he does. Meaning?
I'm sorry?
You said, I let him do what he does.
Yeah.
What's that mean?
If he wants to just get up and go to the store, I'll ask where you're going, but I won't stop him. Just let him go on his way. I'll let him do what he wants to do.
You hear her tone change completely when she's called out for that. Basically, he's like, you let him do what he does, and she's like, I'm sorry. And then the penny drops. And then she's trying to explain it all away by essentially, you know, the guy's such a loser, what's the point in me arguing with him? I just let him do it because, well, I just do, because, you know, it's like the parent being overindulgent with their child. The problem is, when you look at the entirety of the case, hearing her say, well, I just go along with it, I just let him do what he wants. You know, I can't be bothered wasting the energy, essentially, to argue the point. When you have someone saying that in an interview where the discussion has been that this guy has been doing stuff for her daughter for all these years, it really doesn't put her in a good light at all. Because if you let him do what he wants, in terms of just going to the shop whenever, when else do you let him do what he wants?
What do you think happened? Monday to now. You know she's deceased. We showed you pictures that she's deceased. We know that she was probably deceased Sunday into Monday. You didn't see her Monday morning.
I still want to believe she's deceased. I know you showed me pictures, but
for the purpose of this conversation, I need you to believe it because I need you to figure it out. I need you to tell me what you think happened to her.
You know what I find really ironic when I'm watching this interview? This guy's kid is going to grow up to be one super well-rounded, decent individual, because he can spot every trick in the book and he just doesn't buy it, and he knows how to respond. Can you imagine, as his kid is growing older and they try all the usual things that kids try as they're growing up to try and get away with things? He's not going to get away with anything. it is just such a stark contrast to little boy Steffi Weffy, who's at 37, his parents were still enabling him, still listening to his lies and accepting his lies. So basically, Jen has tried everything in her power to wriggle out of answering the question. He wants to know where she thinks Stefan has taken Maddie. And I suspect that, based on the way he's questioning her, that he's got a belief that she probably actually knows full well at least the general area of where Stefan took Maddie. Basically, all this line of questioning is more like someone questioning a suspect as opposed to the parent of a missing child. And Jen has just been trying really, really hard to redirect the conversation, talking about she doesn't trust Stefan's decisions, she lets him do what he wants, all this stuff, anything to avoid going back to the topic of where do you think he took her. But Detective O'Malley isn't playing that game, he's not interested. So now he's basically doubling down and bringing her back to where the conversation's meant to be. What do you think happened? And you get this big pause. And I don't know if he was doing that just for emphasis or if he actually was waiting for Jen to respond, because there's no response from her at that point in time. And then he just really, really doubles down from Monday to now. You now know she's deceased. We showed you. But Jen's going to have one last go at trying to wriggle out of answering these questions. And she goes back to the, I still don't want to believe she's deceased. I know you showed me the pictures. And he cuts her off because he doesn't want to play this game. You know, he's had enough of this BS from her. All she's doing here is trying to deflect. We can tell there's no emotion from her. There's no real reaction to him saying, you know she's deceased. A lot of that to me just screams guilt. So her now saying, I still don't want to believe she's deceased, I don't buy it. She tries the whiny voice, and he's not into that anymore. He's not playing that game at all. So he cuts her off and basically says, for the purpose of this conversation, I need you to believe it. And I need you to figure it out. I need you to tell me what happened to her. He's making it really clear to Jen that he's not playing her game. He's not going to give her sympathy with that whiny, stupid voice that she's got. He's not buying any of this crap. And he wants answers out of her, and he's getting serious. He's backing her into a corner. She needs to give an answer.
I think he killed her that night.
How?
I don't know. Could it be possible that he drugged her? Could he have choked her? I just don't know how you kill someone and don't leave a mess or don't leave evidence, or I mean, was there a mess? Was there evidence? I haven't gone upstairs. I don't know what you guys have, I barely went into the house today, so I don't know what.
I need to know what you think happened.
Well, that's 2 for 2 in terms of Jen and her psychic revelations. She was talking about Maddie being in a wooded area. where there's a lake and gators, and you just have to look at the map to know that that seems to be... I would be pretty certain that's where Stefan was headed. And now, having been pushed to the point where she has to give an answer, she gives an answer. And honestly, I think this is possibly one of the most incriminating statements that she makes throughout this whole interview. I think he killed her that night. And the detective asks, how? Because they've already told her that that's when it happened. So she's not giving anything new there. She's just repeating what she's been told. So he asks her how. She starts with, I don't know. And then she talks about he drugged her or choked her. I just don't know, how do you kill someone and don't leave a mess or don't leave evidence or... And then she pauses. I think she realises at that point in time that she's just completely screwed up, because how does she know that he didn't leave a mess or evidence? And wow, it's uncanny that she comes up with drugged and choked. We know that cause of death for Maddie was strangulation, but I can't help thinking, based on the phone calls, that the toxicology results are also going to show that Maddie was also drugged by Stefan. Now, the thing that I find especially disturbing about this comment is that she refers to Maddie being choked. Not strangled, but choked. Because to me, if I were to differentiate, I would think of choking as being part of a recreational activity, let's say. Whereas strangulation, that's more someone losing control, becoming angry, and there's no personal gratification out of doing so, if you're following along with me, which I'm pretty certain you are. So for her to say choked instead of strangled is kind of disturbing, given the charges that Stefan is up on. For her to also talk about Maddie being drugged is certainly disturbing, especially when we hear the jail phone calls where Stefan is pretty much pointing to that having been something that's come up in the toxicology. But then she just digs herself this enormous hole and jumps in, basically. I mean, was there a mess? Was there evidence? Oh, because I haven't gone upstairs. And then I don't know what you guys have... She can't even get the sentences out, because each of those sentences is going to incriminate her. I don't know what you guys have I don't know what you guys have found up there. I need to be careful what I say, because I don't know how much evidence you've got. And then she finishes with, I barely went into the house today. Okay, but it wasn't today, the 1st of March, that Maddie went missing, Jen. You were in the house all day on Monday, aside from your appointments and when you were supposedly out picking Maddie up. You were in the house from roughly 9 p.m. Monday night through probably all of Tuesday up until about 7 p.m. when they threw you out of the house. So saying I was barely in the house today doesn't fly, because there's been plenty of other times when you could have gone upstairs. And why wouldn't you go upstairs to the last place where you know that your child actually was when your child is missing? There's so many red flags here. Her lack of interest in going upstairs, for starters. I've not been upstairs. Her sudden psychic abilities. And her wanting to know what they know. She wants to know what they found upstairs. Did you find evidence? Was there a mess? She's really dumped herself in it big time here. I mean, we know for starters that a detective is not going to do this kind of thing with a parent who they think is uninvolved. But for her to come out with these things, this is her own child she's talking about. And she's putting on the voice, sure, because that's what she does. So there's no sign of emotion. No parent who is innocent is going to be able to say the things that she's just saying here. And yet she's quite calm about it. She's not having trouble saying it. The only thing she's having trouble with is trying to explain away the fact that she said it in the first place. She's realised that she's given too much information, and you can tell that because of this whole panic thing of, because, well, was there a mess? You know, she's overdoing the questioning them, the, I don't know what you guys know, I barely went into the house. She just can't shut up when she's incriminated herself. She panics and she talks too much. The first time I heard her say this was one of the things that convinced me that she knew exactly what happened to Maddie.
I think he killed her.
How? You mentioned drugged her, you mentioned other things. Explain your reasoning behind those assumptions and we'll move forward day by day.
So he had access to benzos and I think Lunesta.
What are those? I'm not familiar with that.
Benzodiazepines are anxiety medications which relax you and can make you sleepy.
Okay.
And Lunesta, I think, is a sleeping medication, like for insomnia. So I don't know if it's possible he gave her something and she was drugged. In those photos that you showed me where you're saying she's dead, maybe she was drugged. But if she is dead and it was done upstairs, I could just only imagine that he choked her. I don't know how else you would kill someone and not leave a mess.
Now, obviously, it's pretty clear from the way the questioning has gone in this interview that Detective O'Malley does believe that Jen has knowledge. That she, at the very least, knew what happened, knew what Stefan did. But I suspect that it was this moment that it thoroughly confirmed it for him. And if I was in Jen's position and I was answering these questions and I saw the detective suddenly go as still as what Detective O'Malley just did, I'd be getting out of my seat and leaving that interview right then and there. because to me it just spoke volumes to see he's been sort of fidgeting with his hands a bit. The foot was flicking a little bit. And then you see him just go really still. He's really paying attention to what she's doing there. And to me, it feels like that stillness of a predator that's just about to pounce on its prey. Now, this is just my observation. I've not heard anything along the lines of this, so I could just be completely wrong there. But it definitely stood out to me the way he suddenly went really still. So he's basically asked her, explain your reasoning. How did you make these conclusions? And she starts talking about Stefan having access to benzos and Lunesta, and explains that they're sleeping medications. And she's so calm about it. She's talking essentially about this guy having access to medications that would allow him to drug her daughter. And then, once again, she tries to sneak out the side door by commenting, well, maybe those photos you showed me was because he drugged her and she was passed out in the car. But I really don't think that's what was actually on her mind. I think that was her just trying to do a quick save, trying to once again escape the questioning, having one last ditch attempt to try and convince them that, oh, maybe someone abducted Maddie. But then I think she realises the absurdity, because if Maddie was passed out in the car, then obviously Stefan didn't drop her off at school, did he? Or near the school, because you're not going to just dump a passed out person on the side of the road. Someone would definitely notice. Someone would have called the cops. Someone would have called an ambulance. So she realises, I think, as soon as she said it, how ridiculous it sounds. So then she's got to backtrack. And she goes back to, if she is dead and it happened upstairs, I can only imagine that he choked her. I don't know how you would kill someone and not leave a mess. No wonder. Now, I know it's out of sync, but I think it's only a few seconds out of sync. No wonder Detective O'Malley was going still at this. This is a parent debating that someone probably, he probably choked her. That's probably how it happened, because there's no mess. There's no concern from her. Now, what you usually will encounter with parents of a missing child is that they will hang on to hope as long as they can that their child is alive. Now, yes, Jen has been shown images that prove that Maddie's not alive. So that hope has been shot to pieces, which means she should be devastated. She should be incapable of saying things like this. What parent can actually calmly speculate that someone's probably choked their child because there's no mess? It is so cold. So cold. This is not the words of a mother. This is the words of a sociopath. And I think that's why Detective O'Malley reacted like that. I don't know how I would react if I heard a mother saying things like that. I would certainly be looking at her as not a normal person.
How do you think he got her out?
I have no idea, because roommates come in and out of the house at any given point in the morning and we don't know their schedules. They can come in at any time. You guys showed me a picture, I think, of him or her in the car at 7:30 in the morning. My roommate left the house. She's the one who leaves the earliest. She left at 7:45. So like, what if he had waited a little longer? She would have caught him with carrying a body out of the house. How did he do that without being caught or seen?
All this so-called speculation from Jen really is quite disturbing. So, with her having given that whole revelation of, well, he's done it upstairs somehow that has left no evidence or not left a mess, they ask her, how do you think he got her out? And she tries to claim that her roommates are in and out of the house at any time in the morning, and that we don't know their schedules. They can come in at any time. Well, she knows that's a lie. We know from listening to Natalie's interview that Natalie always leaves the house at around 7:45, which is what Jen then goes on to tell the detectives. But the thing is interesting is that her commenting on we don't know their schedules. Well, it doesn't matter what you know, Jen, it's what Stefan knew. So saying that we don't know their schedules, why is that important? But I think what she's actually conveying, without realising that she's doing it, is that perhaps there was a little bit of nervousness over getting Maddie out, just in case one of the flatmates came down earlier than usual. So even though she knows that usually the flatmate will leave at around 7:45, and I think she says she goes downstairs at around 7:35. What Jen is slipping up here, there's a little bit of leakage here, and I think she is actually showing that it was a cause of anxiety that they needed to get Maddie out of the house before one of the flatmates came out of their room. Perhaps the concern was that I think Natalie's the one that's got the master bedroom with her own bathroom off the side. But then I think Angelica has to actually go out of her room to use the bathroom. Not quite sure, let me know. I can't remember how it all works with that house. But I think there are 3 bathrooms, and I think there's a master upstairs and downstairs. But Jen saying that, oh, well, you know, if he'd have waited, you know, if he hadn't got Maddie out at 7:30, she may have caught him with the body. And then she corrects herself and says carrying a body out of the house, because there's a difference there. When you refer to the body, you're being very specific. The body that we are talking about. The body that is your daughter, Jen. As opposed to carrying a body out of the house. There's separation there. That's not necessarily the body. That becomes a hypothetical situation if someone were to be carrying anybody, out of the house at around 7:30 and they had waited a few more minutes, they may have been caught. As opposed to, had Stefan been carrying the body out of the house a bit later, he would have been caught. But to hear her referring to Maddie as the body or a body, it does my head in. She's completely separated herself there. She's basically dissociated completely. That is no longer Maddie in her eyes. Because that seems to be the only way she can cope with very coldly describing the situation. She's a cold woman, but she can't quite go to that extra step and refer to him carrying Maddie out of the house, because it's harder to ignore the facts when you take it back to being a real person and not a body, when you take it back to being your daughter and not a body. In her mind, by separating it and making these things that are happening not being about Maddie but about a body, in her mind, that means that she doesn't have to feel anything. She doesn't have to feel sadness, she doesn't have to feel remorse, she doesn't have to feel guilt. She doesn't even have to feel angry at Stefan. Because in her mind, this is not Maddie. In her mind, there's no longer a personal connection. So she can just shut it all off. A normal parent can't do that. It's not natural for a mother to be able to depersonalise her own child, to be able to separate themselves from the actions like that in a way that allows them to feel no emotions, no remorse, no anger. This woman is not normal. And it says to me that she's had plenty of time to get used to the notion that her daughter is deceased. To get used to the notion that Stefan is responsible for it. Because she's not acting like a parent who's just discovered these things. She's acting like a parent who has guilty knowledge.
That's what I don't understand, because, like, did you guys check and see if any of my neighbors have Ring cameras? Any? Nothing?
I don't know what data we've gotten from them, but at this point I need to know what you think happened to her. I don't need you to ask us what we found.
Okay.
What we found has happened. I need you to come up, in your words, in your mind, what do you think happened that night into Monday, because we do not know. We do not know if her murder occurred Sunday or Monday. All we know is that when you went to bed, they went to bed together, and she's no longer here. So I need to know what you think happened to her, how he got her out of the house, where he went, how he got her into the car, what is your thought on what happened.
Did anyone else's mind go to Chris Watts when she started asking them about the neighbours having Ring cameras? Like, again, she's trying to find out what they know. She doesn't want to give too much information. She wants to know what they know first. Did you check if the neighbours had Ring cameras? Nothing? Because she doesn't want to dump Stefan in it unnecessarily. That's what it comes down to. Why does she need to protect him when he's already locked up? There's got to be something in it for her. Or is it just because she doesn't want to admit that she had knowledge of what was going on and had knowledge that her child was deceased? But I love how Detective O'Malley just puts her back in her place. Essentially, he's saying it's none of your business what we've got. And he says, I don't need you to ask us what we found. I need you to tell us what you think happened. In other words, we're not going to play our hand here. We're not going to tell you what we've already got on Stefan. You just need to come out and tell us what you believe happened. And of course we know that at this point in time, or we can be pretty certain that at this point in time, Detective O'Malley realises that Jen knows. This is my belief based on everything that's going on in this interview. He's hoping for that little slip up from Jen, because she has slipped up so much in this interview. There's been so much leakage. So he's just waiting for that next bit of leakage and doing his best to keep her focused on, this is the question we asked you. We want an answer from you. He's not going to let up. He's not going to let her skirt around the answers and find ways to avoid it. He's determined to get these answers out of her.
I think she was killed Sunday night into Monday morning. I'm thinking he carried her out of the house. I don't know how he didn't get caught by any of my roommates or no one heard. You're saying he drove all around town. I'm not sure where he could have gone.
And then him coming home and leaving and coming home and leaving, what do you think? Knowing that he killed her. If you had
That's
to make,
suspicious
if
as
you
fuck.
It is suspicious as fuck, but if you're writing a book, what do you write? Let's say this is a fiction novel, right? You're now aware that he killed her, so now you can piece together a story of what happened, right? You don't know the story because you're not him, and you tell me he hasn't told you, so it's not real. So you're telling me what you think,
Yeah.
right? We know he killed her. We know he drove out of there Monday morning. We know he discarded her backpack in the trash dumpster. We know he discarded her laptop and one shoe, right? So all her property was discarded to look like she's gone. That way he doesn't have evidence with him. They leave. You've been told that they drove around Orange County, Osceola County, wherever it was. We've pieced that together throughout the week, all right? He's told you where, at least in his version of where he was and what he was doing, right? But then you have all these suspicious times of when he's left and come back and he's gone here and gone there. So what do you think he was doing on all these suspicious times? He's roaming 192. What do you think? Knowing what you know now we can play. You know she's dead. You know that we've given you information. What do you think, knowing what you know, he was doing on 192? He was doing here. He was doing here. He was doing in Northport. What do you think?
So him leaving early in the morning and driving around aimlessly somewhere. I feel like he stashed the body at that time. When he came back and then left again. But see, it's daytime. Like,
How could you move a body or move something in daytime and not be seen? But like, I feel like he went back to check, to make sure he did a good job, or to move the body again. I don't know.
So, Jen has once again put on her psychic hat. He's redirected her. He wants to know what she thinks happened. So, first of all, she talks about Stefan driving around aimlessly in the morning, and she believes he stashed the body, and she says the body, at that time. Jen, do you mean like driving into a parking garage and taking Maddie from the front seat and depositing her in the trunk of his car? Because that's what happened. And you've just about described it. And then she goes on with, when he came back and left again, and there's a pause, and she's like, how do you move a body in daytime and not be seen? So she is essentially saying, when he went out in the morning, he stashed her body somewhere. Stashed implies hiding it somewhere where you are going to then retrieve it. Well, yeah, he did do that. He stashed Maddie in the trunk of his car. And then she talks about him going back out again later. Now, given that in all the stories that Jen says, according to her, he only went back out one more time. Because, according to her, when she got back from her appointment, he was back at the apartment. And then he left a while after lunch to do his errands. So she is specifically referring to that afternoon part of the day when he left to do his errands. And she's basically saying that she believes that at that period of time, he moved Maddie again. Or in her words, he moved, how could you move a body in daytime and not be seen? But she's basically saying that she believes that that's what he did. Well, okay, so funnily enough, Jen, he did manage to move Maddie from the trunk of his vehicle into a field where there was bamboo and leave her there. Pretty much just as you've said. And then she finishes off with, and I feel like he went back to check, or to make sure he did a good job, or to move the body again. We know he went back. We don't know why he went back. We don't know if he had intended on moving Maddie's body. We don't know if he just went back to try and cover her over some more, or if he went back for a darker reason. But we know he went back. So Jen has basically, in a roundabout way, described to the detectives exactly what occurred. I could say 3 for 3, but that's 3 events there, so really that's 5 for 5 now, isn't it? This woman should take up a job as a psychic. It is really disturbing that she is just being so precise with the information that she's given. And I'm sure it's not wasted on the detectives.
But him leaving the house multiple times without his cell phone is sketchy as fuck. It's so suspicious.
Which is an intentional act, it's not accidental, so that can play into what you think happened.
Yeah. Do you think phone being on the dresser?
It was intentional. Her cell records and her cell data from her cell phone show it is not common for her to leave her phone at home. It is common for her to go to school with her. No teenager leaves their phone at home. It's what they're attached to it.
She's left her phone home multiple times.
Her cell data shows that normally it goes with her, so that's intentional. You know it's intentional because he left his too.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's an accident last Friday, this Monday, was not an accident.
Now, let's be real here. Jen knew all along that him leaving his phone at home twice was sketchy AF. This is not something that she has suddenly realised. This is not some sudden epiphany where what the detective has said to her has suddenly made her see the light. She's basically realised at this point in time that if she continues to come up with all this crap to support Stefan, that it's just going to make her look guilty, because that's essentially what the detectives are telling her. So what is she going to do? Time to protect Jen, and suddenly come up with, oh, wow, yeah, it is, it's sketchy AF. As if she never thought of that before. It's kind of like that typical situation where now, some of you may be aware that in Australia, MJ is still illegal. So people you can't smoke it, you can't buy it, you can't grow it. You can buy hemp oil, but that's about as far as it goes. And I know people have come at me before and said, oh, you've got such a negative attitude towards people smoking the stuff. It's just more about a cultural thing, because in Australia it's illegal. Now, obviously, I think most people in Australia in their teens have tried it. You still get people here who use it for medicinal reasons or who just do it for recreational reasons, but it's illegal. But I think, most people would be lying if they said they didn't try it as a teen. And I can remember a time when I was doing my first university degree. I was still living at home, and I went out with a bunch of friends after work to a friend's apartment. And we were just, partying, let's say. And I knew when I got home that I reeked. And of course, even though it was like, 2 o'clock in the morning, my mum had waited up for me because, when parents actually care about their kids, they do actually make sure that they're awake when their kids come home or when their kids go to school. And so I came out with the innocent story of, I went to such and such's place and, I had to leave because they were doing this stuff. And making it sound like I was completely innocent and like I was scandalised. That's exactly what Jen is doing here. She needs to act scandalised to create the image of the innocent Jen. She's basically needing to point out things that are so very, very obviously wrong with Stefan's story or Stefan's actions to create the impression of her innocence. Because, of course, if you can see that they're wrong and you point out they're wrong, well, you must be innocent, because otherwise you would be condoning them. That's the kind of, guilty mindset. But, of course, she hits a snag when he mentions Maddie's phone. Because who pushed the story really hard about Maddie always leaving her phone at home? Sure, Stefan pushed it, but Jen pushed it in every interview too. She's so forgetful. She frequently leaves her phone at home. She regularly leaves her phone at home. I took it with me and I was just going to yell at her for forgetting it and then give it to her. She's really pushed this whole thing of it not being anything out of the ordinary for Maddie to leave her phone at home. And now Detective O'Malley has basically called her bluff. We've actually checked Maddie's records and we can see that she doesn't regularly leave her phone at home. Now, Jen could just go, yeah, okay, I lied, or I over-exaggerated, she has left it at home once or twice. But instead, because this is coming back on Jen, and she realises it's going to make her look guilty that she lied to them, she has to object. So even though they're basically saying, we've caught you out in a lie, she's still going to object to it. The woman's a fool. She comes out with, she's left her phone at home multiple times. Now, notice that's not the same as saying she always leaves her phone at home, or she frequently leaves her phone at home, or, oh, you know, at least once a week, or whatever it was she says. She's saying multiple times, meaning she's done it more than once. Maybe she's only ever left it at home twice. But Jen's going to stick to that story so that she can protest her innocence. She doesn't want any part of her story to be proven to be a lie, because that makes her look guilty. But of course, by arguing the fact, she actually does make herself look more guilty.
So you think that he dumped her when he was driving around? You think that when he left, he went to check her body?
Possibly.
Okay.
Why would you go back out to 182 without your cell phone?
I don't disagree. So he goes out to 192. We think he may have checked where he dropped her, dumped her. He comes home. He tells you he's just roaming around aimlessly. Right?
Yeah.
So that's twice on 192 in one day, because he went to look at the House of Cards bullshit or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and then he went to do the roaming to look for her on this random highway that he never goes to. Okay. We go into the next day and the next day. Think of the suspicious things he's done. Tell me what you think he's doing.
Him grabbing my phone and trying to log into his emails, that seems kind of suspicious. What was he trying to see? What was he trying to do? The thing is when he had my cell phone, now that I think back to it, he had something wrapped around it, so the phone was under a blanket, and he was like this. I tried looking at the screen at one point, and I could see an email. But I was
And that was the cell phone we took from you today, or you gave us today.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So she's latched onto this game of what about Stefan, what about his actions, etc., looks sketchy as, because it takes the focus off this original question of, we want to know what you know, where you think he's taken Maddie. We don't believe that you are being honest with us. Instead, it gives her the opportunity to act like she's on their side. You know, I'm not really supporting Stefan, because don't forget, they also have just called her out, basically saying, you've been protecting Stefan this whole time. So she needs to demonstrate to them that she's not protecting Stefan. But of course she needs to do that in a way that isn't going to implicate her. So now she talks about him grabbing her phone while they're in the car and trying to log on to his emails. She's like, that's suspicious. This is where her story falls apart. On one hand, she's saying he's trying to log on to his emails. And then she suddenly comes up with, he had something wrapped around it, so the phone was under a blanket. You can hear the progression of the lie. This has just occurred to her. Otherwise, she would have said he had a blanket wrapped around it, or he had his hand wrapped around it, or something like that. But instead, she's like, he had something wrapped around. So straight up, that tells me she's making this up as she goes along, saying the phone was under a blanket, adding that in after saying it was something. And here's the thing. Thinking back to the warrants with the cars, they were sitting in Jen's car. When you have a look at the documents in terms of what they documented as being in each of the cars, yes, there were blankets in the Stearns' car. But remember, what she's talking about here is what occurred when they were sitting in her car after Stearns' phone was taken. At the time when Stearns' phone was taken, he had also been instructed not to go back to his car, not to move his car, not to go into his car. There were no blankets in Jen's car. The apartment was locked down, so it's not like they went in and got a blanket. It's not like Stefan went, well, I want to sneakily check my emails, so I'm going to just dash inside and get a blanket so I can wrap it around my phone. And imagine how awkward that would be anyway, to try and wrap a blanket around a mobile phone. Like, are you serious? And then, so she's trying to create the impression that she doesn't really know what he was doing because he had a blanket wrapped around her phone. Her phone. And then I tried looking at the screen at one point, and I'm pretty certain that she said that she could see email. So here's the problem with that too. Whose phone was he doing this on? Oh, that's right, your phone, Jen. So you see him on your phone supposedly with a blanket wrapped around it so that you supposedly can't see, but you can actually see an email at one point in time. And yet after you get the phone back from him, you don't at any point in time check to see what it was that he was doing. It was only the two of them in the car. So if, as she claims, he was covering up the phone, he was doing it to hide something from her. And yet she never felt suspicious. She didn't think that there was anything wrong, and she wanted to get him a lawyer because she thought they were looking at the wrong person. She never went and checked her phone to see what he was doing on it. But, I mean, it seems illogical anyway to basically claim that he had something wrapped around the phone to give the impression that she couldn't see, and then turn around and say, but I saw an email. What she's doing here is trying to create plausible deniability. But all she's doing is making herself look guilty as anything. None of the bits of this story add up. Where's the blanket from? Because it wasn't in her car. They didn't get it from the townhouse. They didn't get it from Stefan's car. And she's so trusting of him, even though he's wrapping a blanket around her phone. She didn't see that as suspicious. She didn't go and check up on it later. Here, what she's saying here to me makes her sound so guilty. To me, it sounds like she knew precisely what he was trying to do on her phone and why he was trying to do it on her phone. Because otherwise, why try and create the impression that she's got no idea? Why try and make him look suspicious when before she's not said any of this? She's only doing this to basically get herself out of trouble. And of course, after saying all that, you get the Soto sigh. And what is she going to do now? She's going to sit there quietly, watch the detectives, and wait for their cue. She wants to know if she's given enough information to take the spotlight off her. Because, of course, the goal here is to basically give the bare minimum that she can, just enough to make it look like, oh yeah, you know, now that I think about it, I see he is guilty. To make it look like she had nothing to do with it, because now she's acknowledging his guilt.
Can you guys tell me if this is true? Because I recall a family member telling me something, like my sister. Was the last thing searched on it Amber Alert?
Her cell phone has Amber Alert searches in it, but I looked through her cell phone last night. I do believe that she may have been clicking on links for Amber Alerts that came through. I don't think she was actually searching them.
Okay.
They could have just been links she clicked on.
Okay. Because I wasn't sure if that was him Googling on her phone about Amber Alerts or if that was her.
That we will never know. He is not obviously cooperating.
Okay, when someone voluntarily offers up information that they haven't been asked for, there's a reason. It's not some random question of her looking up Amber Alerts. That's not going to be connected with Jen's original theory of Maddie being abducted, because you don't have a psychic moment before you get abducted and go, I'm going to look up Amber Alerts and see what they're going to do after I've been abducted. And she specifically asked them, do you know if that was Stefan or if that was Maddie? And she says the last thing that was searched up on Maddie's phone. So here's the thing. We know that Jen can get into Maddie's phone. And I wouldn't be surprised if Stefan can get into Maddie's phone without Jen's assistance. We know from the body-worn camera interview that he has, at one point in time, looked at things on Maddie's phone. In terms of when the search would have been made, well, if it was something that Stefan was researching before all this happened, I can't see why he wouldn't have just researched it on his computer at home, given the other searches that he did that he didn't seem concerned about leaving them up. So it seems to me that perhaps they have become concerned, and it's a bit of a guilty search. After they've reported Maddie missing, they just want to check that the police aren't looking at them. We know that Detective Hunt collected Maddie's phone at lunchtime on the day after Maddie was reported missing, which means that from like 9 o'clock the night before to midday, they had possession of Maddie's phone. It just sounds sus as anything to me that she's basically questioning them here to find out if they believe Stefan did that search. Because it's irrelevant if it occurred before Maddie went missing, and Jen knows that. At this point in time, they've made it pretty clear that Stefan was responsible. They're getting her to try and give them an idea of where Stefan might have taken Maddie. So it's not like she's suddenly thinking, well, maybe Maddie decided to run away. That is not something that's going through her mind at this point in time. So to me, the only reason she's asking that is once again to find out what they know. And now, the answer is definitely avoidance. I reckon he saw that as sus as well, because he basically says, we'll never know because Stefan's not cooperating. Jen's trying very, very hard here to dump Stefan in it and to claim that she knows this happened because her sister saw it on the phone. The detective's not going to tell her if that was the last search. Note he didn't say that it was the last search. He said that there were instances where someone had been clicking on these Amber Alerts on Maddie's phone. He doesn't give a timeline, and he even goes as far as saying, we'll never know because Stefan's not cooperating. I honestly believe that they have used Maddie's phone to search Amber Alerts after reporting her missing because they were paranoid about the fact that their story has Stearns being the last person with Maddie and Maddie being in Stearns' car. Or maybe the goal was to look up Amber Alerts to see if the police officers had bought their story of abduction. We dropped her off, or he dropped her off, and then she went missing. And of course Jen's like, now she knows that they're looking at Stefan. She knows they are now expecting her to say these things that she thinks look suspicious. And of course, that's probably something which occurred on her watch, something which occurred when they were both together. And so she's going to separate herself from it by making it sound like she had no idea about it until somebody spotted it in her search history, and she's going to blame Stefan for it. Now we've seen Detective O'Malley in action here, so it's pretty damn clear that he's not going to be fooled by this. He's going to see this as essentially an admission of guilt from Jen. Hence the slightly non-committal, slightly vague answer. But in his mind, he's probably chalking that up as another sign of Jen's involvement.
Can you like, could you guys explain what happened yesterday?
Before that, I need you to continue going away.
Wow. Can you guys explain what happened yesterday? She is, of course, referring to, I believe, Stefan being arrested, them being separated, all that sort of stuff. This has got nothing to do with them searching for Maddie. She's finally asking a question, but it's got nothing to do with the search for Maddie. Here she wants to know about their investigation relating to Stearns. She suddenly gained a little bit of confidence because she thinks she got an answer about the Amber Alert question, even though she doesn't realise that he's basically headed her off at that and not given her an answer. But she's gained enough confidence to basically question them about the investigation relating to Stearns, not about anything to do with Maddie. And his response is basically, with that, I need you to keep going with, and then it must be something about Maddie because it's all redacted, but basically saying, essentially, none of your business, you're not getting out of it that easy. I think in her mind, she's given them enough things that make Stefan look guilty, and she doesn't want to go down that path anymore. Because, of course, each time she has to come up with something that in her eyes makes Stefan look guilty, she's got to do so in a way that doesn't include her. So this is a really challenging game for Jen.
Yeah. Where are we at?
Suspicious utilization of your phone.
Yeah. Of the phone. Him disappearing multiple times. Him disappearing to Northport. What the hell was he doing? That is suspicious. I mean, now that I know that that's where he went, that is suspicious as all fuck. Why did he go to a storage unit facility? What was he grabbing? What was he trying to dispose of? Or what was he trying to hide in the that to me is suspicious.
Is she really so stupid that it doesn't occur to her that they have spoken to Chris and they know what Chris has said? Because what she's done here is she's had a little bit of a psychic moment again, but she's hidden that in amongst Chris's story. Now, at the point that she did this interview, she would have known that Stefan actually hadn't gone to the storage unit. Detectives had told Chris that. And we know that her and Chris had been together after Stefan was arrested. Chris drove Jen to her sister's house. And she is basically pushing the same narrative that Chris has pushed. He went to Northport to go to the storage unit. She should realise that these detectives do communicate with each other. She should realise that they know that Stefan didn't go to the storage unit. She should realise that they know that they told Chris that Stefan didn't go to the storage unit. Essentially, she's outright lying here. She definitely knows that he did not go to the storage unit. You don't see her speculating at all about him going to the house, because that's not the story that her and Chris have been pushing. Chris pushed really hard with this Stefan must have gone to the storage unit story. And I believe that was to hide the fact that Stefan actually went to the house. Because we know that Chris disabled the cameras at the house. He even took the modem and put it on the office floor, claiming that they were changing providers. And conveniently, the door keypad didn't work. He went to leave and suddenly discovered that that didn't work either. So you have this whole thing going on here from both Jen and Chris, trying to hide the fact that Stefan went to the house. And we know that he did, because FBI have him banged to rights. He was at the address, logged in at that IP address, logged into his Google account. But both Chris and Jen have tried to hide that fact. But here's where her story starts to get interesting. Why did he go to the storage unit? What was he grabbing? What was he trying to dispose of? Or what was he trying to hide in the... And she can't finish the sentence there because she knows he wasn't trying to hide anything in the storage unit. But how interesting is it that she's trying to push this story of Stefan hiding something in the storage unit when Chris later on comes up with this hard drive that he found hidden in the storage unit, which he claims Stefan must have hidden in there. And they basically tell him, actually, no, that's not the hard drive from his computer. It actually sounds to me like this story was agreed upon early on, that Stefan would go and remove the hard drive from his computer. That's what he was grabbing to answer Jen's question. And he disposed of it, or destroyed it, which is what Jen and Chris have basically said, in their own way. And then the idea was for Chris to produce this other hard drive which had nothing to do with anything and claim it was in the storage unit. So she's had this psychic moment here of him basically grabbing something while he was down at Northport to dispose of it. Well, yep. Where is that hard drive, Jen? Did Stefan tell you what he did with it? Did he simply dispose of it, or did he destroy it? And then trying to say that he was trying to hide something in the storage unit. And she's like, that to me is suspicious. Psychic moment combined with Chris's little story. Again, if anything, this to me makes it look like she had guilty knowledge.
Do you put more weight on that than 192?
190, no, because 192 would be... Something happened in Northport. There'd be no reason he would take...
Do you understand what I was asking with that phrase? Putting weight on it? Like, do you feel like it's more suspicious what he was doing in Northport versus 192?
I don't know which one's... I don't know which one is more suspicious to me. They both... 192 seems to me like the easiest place he could have dumped her, or like figured out where to put her. Unless she was in my trunk the whole time and he went to Northport.
The trunk of your car?
Yeah.
Didn't you drive your car at some point?
I
Did you
did.
guys sit in your car at some point?
I did. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I would have probably smelled something, but I didn't.
Now, she's given this story of him heading down to Northport, and it's her belief that he went down to grab something or dispose of something. She's talking about objects here, not Maddie. But then here, the detective asks her what she thinks is more significant, him going up and down 192 or him heading down to Northport. Now, what he's trying to get at here is what's more relevant, him trying to dump something or what he did with Maddie. And she misinterprets this, and now she basically starts with, well, 192 would be the easiest, and he probably dumped her or figured out where to put her around there. So she is actually still differentiating between Maddie being dumped, in her words, somewhere around 192, and Northport's not connected with that. Northport is connected with him going down there to grab something or dispose of something. But then she throws in this ridiculous thing of, unless she was in the trunk the whole time and he went to Northport. Again, this is Jen just trying to make Stefan look guilty, trying to separate herself from it all. And this is one of those instances where she makes herself look really bad, because they basically call her out on it. Well, didn't you drive your car? Weren't you in your car? And the words that come out of her mouth are not what you would ever expect to hear a parent say. I would have probably smelled something, but I didn't. So matter of fact. She's talking about the possibility of her being present in her car while her daughter's remains were in the boot of that car. That should just about send a person catatonic. That should cause a major reaction when the reality kicks in. But for Jen, it doesn't. For her, it's just like, oh yeah, no, but I would have smelt something, so yeah, no, couldn't have been that. So we still have the psychic Jen working here, that as far as Stefan's movements, well, Northport has nothing to do with him actually hiding Maddie. That has something to do with him destroying something or getting rid of something. Whereas 192, yep, that's got something to do with him taking Maddie somewhere. This woman has remarkable psychic powers, doesn't she?
So I'm just trying to think, I'm like, did he stash a body in Northport? No, I don't think so. He's probably hiding something or destroying something. So I guess 192 would probably be the most important right now.
Okay, I'm going to quote Chris here, talking about his storage unit. And he said, there's not much room, but you could probably stash a body in there. I haven't said that quite right, but, you know, that's essentially what he says. And what does Jen say here? Well, maybe he stashed her body in Northport, but probably not. Let's go back to Chris. When he found out that the hard drive that he gave them wasn't the hard drive from Stefan's computer, the hard drive that he claims to have found in the storage unit, his comment was, well, where's the hard drive from his computer? He must have destroyed the thing. what's Jen talking about here? Well, Stefan must have gone down to Northport. He was probably hiding something or destroying something. Well, tell us more, Jen. This, of course, is long before Chris was told that hard drive you gave us isn't the hard drive from the computer. Long before Chris came to the conclusion that Stefan must have destroyed it. And yet, supposedly, neither Chris or Jen knew anything about what Stefan did.
Her being in your trunk is oddly specific.
The only reason I say that is because from what you guys have told me, he went directly from the hotel to Northport. I don't think he made any stops anywhere in Kissimmee or anything first and then went to Northport.
She really didn't pick up on what was going on there, did she? He confronts her with her being in the trunk is oddly specific, which is essentially saying, how do you know that he put her in the trunk? And don't forget, earlier on, she gave this whole narrative where she essentially had him moving Maddie before he finally took her somewhere and left her there. Which certainly makes it sound like she knew that he transferred Maddie into the trunk of his car. And now, she's used that again, talking about him having her in the trunk to go to Northport. And he's questioned her about it being oddly specific about him having her in the trunk. So she goes back to the Northport story, even though she's basically discounted it. I think he had a valid point here. Why did it come to mind for her that he hadn't simply taken Maddie and left her somewhere, but that he had her in the trunk of a vehicle for a period of time? That is very oddly specific.
All we know is what we can piece together through accessible cameras and data. So his movements, his driving patterns, his actions, we can only 100% say what they are if they're on camera.
Okay.
So we can say he went to Northport because the car was in Northport. Where he stopped, where he went in between, that cannot be factual from us if we don't have a camera. It can just be an assumption, which is why I want your assumptions, because you know him, I don't.
Yeah.
So he's basically signalling to her here that we know a lot about his movements because of cameras and because of data. But we're not telling you what we know. What we're saying is that there is some gaps in our knowledge and we want answers from you. So he's signalling to her basically that if you lie to us, we are going to know. Again, this is more what you would say to a suspect. They are definitely looking really closely at Jen here. They're still not treating her like a victim, so this mother whose child is missing and knows nothing. They believe that she does know something. And they want her to know that they do have quite a lot of information. And they will catch her out with her lies.
If I fell asleep at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, hotel. What was that, Monday night? Tuesday night?
One of them.
I'm just trying to think, like, could he have had time to stop somewhere, wherever he stashed her, and then took her to Northport? I think he had time.
Has he cleaned your car since it came back from Northport? Has he brought it to a car wash? Has he detailed it? Paid somebody to come out?
No.
Because you, through your, we called it a fiction novel, you pieced together what you think happened based on a suspicious activity, and you ended with, you think he put her in your trunk and brought her to Northport.
Yeah.
I know I asked you to make assumptions, but now I want to know why.
So they pointed out to her how improbable it was for him to have kept Maddie in the trunk of her car. But she's hooked on this idea of suggesting that that's where he's taken Maddie, down to Northport. Because let's send them as far away as possible and get the focus off where Maddie is. So now she's coming up with this whole notion of, well, I wonder if he had time to stop somewhere, to stop wherever it was that he hid her and collect her and then take her down to Northport. Oh yes, I think he had time. Which is just so illogical. She's already admitted there was no smell or anything in her car. Do you really think that if someone transported a deceased body for 2 hours, 3 hours, in the boot of a car, that there wouldn't be a residual smell 2 days after that person went missing? Get real, Jen. She knows this is not likely. She's already had this conversation where they've essentially told her that they believe that Maddie's probably somewhere off 192. She's already had this conversation where she claims that she believes that the trip down to Northport was to dispose of something or destroy something. Nothing about taking Maddie down there. But now she's latched onto the idea, even though it's the most unlikely thing possible. And of course, the detectives are going to point out how absurd that is and try and redirect her to, let's talk about where Stefan has taken Maddie. Because that's the goal. She's doing her best to steer away from that goal. But they're not going to let her do that. They're going to redirect back to, we need to find Maddie.
Why is that how we finished this? What is in your mind leading you to believe that is the ending to the story?
Because 192 seems like a really busy strip, and I can't think of anywhere immediately, like, other than going deep into St. Cloud, like passing St. Cloud, like going into Holapa or Harmony, that I could see some stashing the body somewhere around there. But Northport has so many wooded areas, and I feel like, I don't know, he would be familiar with both areas. I just don't know him to ever drive down 182 super far down, like into St. Cloud. But I've known him to drive around all around Northport.
She knows from the detectives that Stefan went to St. Cloud. And yet she's claiming that it seems far more likely that he's going to hide Maddie somewhere for 2 days, then transport her in the trunk of Jen's car all the way down to Northport, a 2-3 hour drive. She seems to find that far more likely than him having gone to St Cloud on the day that Maddie went missing and taken her somewhere there. Because despite detectives telling her that Stefan had been to St Cloud, she's now protesting with, "I don't know him to have ever driven super far down into St Cloud." She's trying to say that St Cloud doesn't seem likely other than if he were to drive deep into St Cloud. Which, what she's saying is basically, but he wouldn't do that. So don't look at St Cloud. It seems far more likely that he would drive 3 hours with a deceased child in his car than 20 minutes. And then, of course, she comes up with the explanation of, because, you know, he drives all round Northport. Well, didn't you claim that that's what he also does quite often when he comes to Kissimmee? He likes to just randomly drive around. That's what her explanation was for the Monday morning. She was normalising that and saying, well, that's just what he does. He does just like to drive around. But now, according to her, he wouldn't possibly ever have gone deep into St Cloud, because when he drives around, he does that driving around when he's down at Northport, but apparently not up here. She's trying very, very hard to redirect them.
But see, I don't want to say anything and like lead you guys down to Northport to do a search and nothing's there. I'm just
We're gonna
thinking,
go everywhere.
We're searching the woods right now where she's not.
okay. I just want to be like, I know you guys are like looking at me for the details, but I'm like, I don't want to send you on a wild goose chase.
Your child's been missing for several days, and you're reluctant to suggest areas that they should look because you don't want to send them on a wild goose chase. Yeah, that makes sense. If she really, really was worried about them finding Maddie, wouldn't she be wanting them to look in every location that she could possibly think of? If you are the parent of a missing child, there is no such thing as a wild goose chase. You would search to the end of the earth to find your child. You wouldn't give a damn about how many officers were searching, because you'd be glad to know that there was a search going on. You wouldn't give a damn about the possibility of sending them on a wild goose chase, because you would rather send them somewhere where it doesn't seem very likely than not find your child. This woman is unbelievable.
You know him better than us. You gotta really think. feel like you want to tell us.
No, if I knew what to tell you, I would tell you. If I had the truth, I would tell you. I don't know anything.
So he's giving her an out here. I feel like you want to tell us. He's trying to prompt her to respond. And of course, were she completely innocent? That should also result in her getting a bit angry with them. Because essentially what is implied here when he says, I feel like you want to tell us, is that we're not buying your BS. We know that you know. And we think that you, deep down, do want to tell us. Because you don't want to leave your daughter lying out in a paddock somewhere. If she genuinely knew nothing, if she was genuinely innocent, she should get angry about now. Protest with, I've told you everything I can think of. But what does she do? She starts with the whole bumbling around again. If I knew what to tell you. She's not saying she doesn't know anything here. She's saying if I knew what to tell you. In other words, my take on this is if I knew what to tell you to get you off my back and end this conversation, then I certainly would. It's not about if I knew what to tell you that would help you to find Maddie. It's about if I knew how to get out of this, I'd tell you that. She's not saying she doesn't know anything. She's not angry with them for essentially accusing her of knowing what happened, of knowing where Maddie is. She's just basically frustrated. She wants out of this conversation. And if she knew how to, she would. If I had the truth, I would tell you. Again, objecting a little bit too much. It's not what you expect to hear from a parent who's missing their child, a parent who knows nothing. She's basically creating more barriers here. She's tried to redirect them to down Northport. Don't look up here. Go look down at Northport for Maddie. They're not buying that. They've signalled that they're not buying that. So what does she do? She doesn't come up with more suggestions. She doesn't get angry at them for essentially accusing her of knowing stuff and not helping them out. But she comes up with that typical Jen protestation. Well, if I knew the truth, I'd tell you. It's one of those things that's a given, of course. If you knew the truth, you would tell them. You don't have to actually point that out.
Jennifer, where do you think he took her?
If I were him and I had to stash a body, but I would never do this. My mind would say to go to Lake Toho. There's a lot of woods there, there's a lot of gators. I don't want to think of it though. I just don't want to think about him getting eaten by gators. I don't know where she'd be from.
How do you possibly make the jump from claiming that you don't believe that she's actually dead, but you think she's been abducted? How do you make the leap from that to her being eaten by gators and then saying, I don't want to think about her getting eaten by gators? This is not natural by any stretch. This is not the reaction. This is not a normal reaction for a parent. So he's basically asked her, where do you think he took her? And first of all, she comes out with, if I were him and I had to stash a body, but I would never do this. Why do you even need to say you would never do this? Because that should be a given. But I find it disturbing that she can even consider it. This is her child she's talking about. And yeah, as she gets through this conversation, she puts on her little baby act. But you can see there's no tears. So she's like, my mind would say, go to Lake Toho. Because there's a lot of woods and there's a lot of gators. So is that kind of close to what you told him, Jen? Go to Lake Lizzie because there's woods and there's gators? Because we know that in terms of Lake Toho, that's not far enough into St. Cloud. You were thinking more along the lines of somewhere that was a little bit more secluded. Somewhere where he probably wouldn't be spotted, weren't you, Jen? I just find it so disturbing that she can, for starters, go back to talking about going and stashing the body somewhere where there's a lot of woods, there's a lot of gators, and then even going as far as saying, I don't want to think about her getting eaten by gators. Okay, no parent does want to think about their child being eaten by gators. But you know what? A normal parent wouldn't be able to verbalise that. Because by verbalising it, you're acknowledging a reality. It's not where a parent, not where the brain goes to if you are the parent of a missing child. Yes, maybe you do think the worst when your child is missing. But the brain protects itself. So even if at the back of your mind there's all these horrible thoughts, you're incapable of voicing them. Because by saying them out loud, it makes them feel more real. Now, yes, she did say it really, really quiet. But at the same time, she said it. And to make that jump from, I believe my child's been abducted and she's still alive, to I think maybe she's been eaten by gators. That's mind-blowing. I honestly cannot wrap my head around what goes on in this woman's brain. But honestly, the way she's speaking is not what I would expect from a parent who genuinely believes that her child's gone missing and she knows nothing about it. All these hypothetical explanations that she's given to the detectives are so close to reality that it does make her sound like she's suddenly psychic. But on top of that, the things that she has come out with here are so cold. These are not the things that you would expect to hear from a parent who is genuinely concerned about the whereabouts of their missing child. To me, this is more like the words of a parent who's known exactly what has gone on. They've worked through it in their head. They've come to terms with it. So they can't actually pretend to show emotions over something that they've already processed. So I have to say, this feels like a marathon going through this interview, but that said, it's a really long interview. But there is just so much going on, so much to talk about, that it is mentally exhausting, I have to say. So for that reason, and also because there's now a bit of a change of direction, I'm going to end this video here. So what we're about to see is him basically calling her out and saying, we will find her, and if there's a chance that we can prove that you didn't help us, that you didn't assist us to your full capability, the consequences are that you could face the same charges and the same amount of time in jail. So they're not playing games anymore. And there is a definite change in her demeanour. So I think it is probably definitely a good spot to make a break and stop here, because you need to see all that together, because it is so apparent. So while I had hoped to possibly reach the end of this interview in this video, seems like that's just not going to happen just yet. So on that note, thanks for listening. If you're new to my channel, please do subscribe. Also, please hit the like button and please leave a comment below. So thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.